Seek ye the truth, and the truth will make you free, and nothing else will do it. Jesus Christ has never lied to anybody. Why won't you listen to him?
And man will either worship the one true God, or man will worship a lie.
You must stay away from people who will not document as fact what they put in their articles. That's why my broadcast scares the hell out of socialists. That's why I was named as the most dangerous radio host in America, because I shoot documented facts which cannot be refuted. That's what's dangerous. Don't spread a rumor. Spread the truth. Document it. Prove it. Make it irrefutable, and you too will become dangerous.
It's time. Speak out. Speak out.
Tweet it, blog it, Facebook it.
Shout it out to your neighbors and tell everyone you know.
You see, what happens when you broadcast the truth is you piss everybody off.
Faith is resistance.
Tweet it, blog it, Facebook it. Shout it out to your neighbors. Tell everybody you know. Well, welcome to the Art Bell Show, my friends. It is a late night affair. And by the way, can we just please welcome back to the Armor of Truth Live Show, the lovely Summer. Where are you, Summer?
Hello there.
There she is. There she is.
Greetings and salutations.
Okay. Satan was given authority on the earth. And then mankind was created to take dominion on the earth. There's the conflict. It was inevitable. But neither Satan nor mankind, or any combination of the two, has ever been able to rule the world. They tried at the Tower of Babel. You see what happened there. God separated the people off into nations, confusing the languages. And that was his design for keeping order, for restraining evil in the world. But as you look around today, it seems like the good guys are losing everywhere. But neither Satan nor mankind have ever been able to build a kingdom on the earth. And so we have what looks like a lot of different topics here. We have, first of all, globalism is dead, and something new is going to take its place. Maybe not everywhere, but in America we know what that is. So with that foundation of the foundational conflict understood, when we look around and we try to understand and discern what's going on with the developments in the world, what we want you to understand is this can be understood with one key. I'm speaking from the perspective of an American here, okay? And that key is not hidden. They want you to think, they're happy for you to believe that it's hidden, that you have to uncover mountains of esoteric information to figure out who's in charge and what's really going on. But it's not hidden. And so the first question we want to ask tonight, as we bring all of these topics and focus them down on one cause. Who benefits from a weakened America? Right? If enough Americans were made to believe that the system is corrupt beyond redemption, that the elites are just too powerful, that a technocratic prison planet is inevitable. If enough Americans could be trained to forget who we are, if enough Americans could be educated to misinterpret and forget who America's longest standing and most pernicious enemy is, or if enough Americans could be convinced that nothing ever changes, what would the result of that kind of a belief, that kind of rampant belief system mean? What would that belief or fear, if millions of Americans had it? If millions of Americans believed that if they just abandoned their inheritance, the inheritance of what we call the covenant of liberty, a temporal covenant between the founders and those who would come after, what if millions of Americans just forgot about that or abandoned their inheritance? What if millions of Americans abdicated their duty to keep it? What if millions of Americans stopped voting, stopped trying? Who would benefit from that? Right here and right now. From the war in Iran to a group of feminists gathered in Massachusetts, as if on cue, to demonstrate public support for a mother who killed her 3 children. From the Revolutionary War to the wars of the 20th century, to the Cold War, then to the fall of the Soviet Union, then the rise of the neoconservative era, from Waco to Oklahoma City to 9/11, to the global war on terror and the forever war era, right? From Vietnam all the way up to Trans Day of Vengeance on Easter Sunday, from the assassinations of 4 U.S. presidents to MK Ultra and the rise of the conspiracy theorist. How do we explain the reversals of people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and the oddity of Candace Owens? How do you understand the change in Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Joe Kent? Why are we telling you that globalism is dead? And why is it that economy, or global banking, why is that a relevant topic for a Christian media organization? Because the most powerful weapon globalism ever possessed wasn't money, military force, or control of institutions. It was inevitability. Economics happens to be the spiritual stronghold they've used to get this control, to put you to sleep. It was the conviction that the system could never be defeated, that every election was just theater, every apparent victory was controlled opposition, that every effort to resist was just merely helping to advance the enemy's plan. That's not discernment, my good friends. That's determinism. Recently, we did a show here, and we defined that as satanic determinism. It's the belief that history belongs to the enemies of God, that evil is sovereign here and now, that resistance is futile, that Satan's servants understand and control history more completely than God, or more completely than God's people ever could. But the truth is, evil, Satan, they're not sovereign. Only God is sovereign. That means that it's all his. And he is in charge and in control of all of it. And that's why we're prepared to say something that many people consider impossible. Just not true. They want you to think that it couldn't happen. So we're saying it to you. Globalism is dead. It doesn't mean that every globalist institution has disappeared or isn't trying to fight back. It doesn't mean the struggle is over. It certainly doesn't mean that every person claiming to oppose globalism can or should be implicitly trusted. It means something far more precise. Globalism has lost its position of historical inevitability. In our last show, we defined some terms, and we'll continue to define them. And then one of them was the extraction system. That's the system we've been living under all of our lives. If you're a Gen Xer, or maybe you're a boomer watching this. And certainly if you're younger than that, The extraction system is the one you're used to. That's the one you've been living under all of your lives. It's become normalized. But right now, and there are many people doing their best to keep you from understanding this, the extraction system is being forced on the defensive. While the principles of national sovereignty, productive sovereign credit or economic nationalism, protectionism, they'll call it protectionism to make it sound like it's a problem, but it's economic protection, sovereign protection. And the ideas of Republican self-government are returning to the center of world affairs, not just in the United States. So to understand what's happening, you need a much older and deeper framework than left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, or even nationalism versus globalism, or nationalism versus internationalism. Since the emergence of the first modern financial empire, which followed 1688 and the foundation of the Bank of England, the Western world has been shaped by a continuing struggle between two opposing conceptions of man. Who is man? What is man? What is man for? The first one regards man primarily as an economic unit, a quantity to be measured, an evolved animal, to be managed, indebted, moved, and consumed. And within this system, land, labor, commodities, currencies, and human beings all become instruments of extraction. In that system, power belongs to those who can manipulate the system most efficiently, while ordinary people become the resources that sustain it. Now, there are two systems. The other system begins with an entirely different declaration that man is created in the image of God, what theologians call the Imago Dei. In other words, there's something unique about us among all of the created beings. From animals to angels, there's something unique about humanity. We're not cattle. We're not capital. We're not merely consumers, taxpayers, workers, soldiers, or statistical units. Human beings possess God-given dignity and moral responsibility. Human beings have minds worthy of cultivation. We're able to do labor, productive labor. We're able to produce something more than tribute for the extraction system. We're able to protect the innocent, restrain evil, and preserve the conditions in which families, communities, and nations can fulfill their proper callings before God. God made a covenant with mankind. He made one with Adam before the fall, and then after the fall, and then again with Noah. This covenant runs right on through up to today, that the result of productive, honest, creative labor would produce fruits that would sustain you. The extraction system inserts itself between the human being and the fruits of their labor and extracts from it. This causes a condition of unrest. What God promised was that this work, the fruits of this labor, would produce a sense of satisfaction, rest. And that's why on the seventh day, he called that the Sabbath. That would be the day of rest. That is the fundamental divide, economic unit or Imago Dei. Nearly every major struggle that's unfolding right now over currency, credit, tariffs, energy, industrial production, war, trade, and national borders ultimately advances one vision or the other. One of those two systems. It can all be boiled down to you're either serving one or the other of those systems. And that's whether it's the participants understand the system they're serving or not. So that's why economics can't be dismissed as just material or as somehow secondary to the spiritual battle. Economics is a spiritual stronghold. The biblical economy began in Eden. God placed man in creation, commanded him to cultivate and guard it, and authorized mankind to exercise responsible dominion over the abundance of its produce. And so the economic vocation continues from Adam, another covenant with Adam after the fall, through Noah, right on through the, the kings of Israel, right up until today. Throughout the law and the prophets, the wisdom literature, the teaching of Christ and the apostles, we see it. Scripture speaks continually about labor, wages, property, inheritance, lending, debt, honest money, just weights and measures, care for the poor, condemnation of theft, and wickedness. The wickedness that withholds the fruits of a man's labor. These are not incidental concerns. This is at the heart of the conflict in the world today. But it reveals the moral government of God applied to material life. That's why economics, global banking is a spiritual stronghold. Every economic system, every government, every household operates according to or embodies a theology. That's because everywhere there is an authority figure, that authority is answering or trying to live out some fundamental religious idea. They're answering fundamentally religious questions. Who owns creation? Who does all this belong to ultimately? What is man? What is man for? What is labor for? Who is entitled to the fruits of your labor? What moral limits govern wealth and power? An extraction system answers those questions, saying that man exists to sustain the system. The biblical order answers that the system exists to serve God's purposes for man, God's purposes for family, community, and nation. So the struggle over economics is consequentially not a retreat from spiritual warfare. It is one of the principal theaters of spiritual warfare. And that brings us up to our moment and why it is that we're making this declaration to you that globalism is dead. That's because for more than a generation, for longer than that, monetarism, financialization, and global extraction have occupied the commanding position. Americans were taught to distrust. We were trained, right? What if enough Americans could be trained to stop trying? We've been trained to distrust not merely corrupt leaders, but we've been trained to distrust our own nation, our own system that was established. We've been trained to distrust our constitutional inheritance, our industrial capacity, and even the right to govern ourselves. We've been trained to believe that decline was unavoidable and that the only alternatives were submission to the extraction system or burn it down and build something new. That cultivated resentment now feeds the black pill, right? It's all rigged. Nothing ever changes. The New World Order cannot lose. They're too powerful. But that conclusion is mistaken. It mistakes the enemy's propaganda for a law of history. What we're witnessing is not the invention of some unprecedented new order. It's the recovery of an older American tradition, which was, as established, as founded, the protection of God's covenant with man to receive the fruits of his labors without interference. A system of national independence and government ordered toward the common good rather than the extraction demands of a transnational financial system. That is the Hamiltonian tradition. It was dubbed later on the American system. And if you pay attention, you don't even have to look that closely. You can see that it's returning after decades of deliberate neglect, obfuscation. The reason it sounds unusual or may sound like something far afield to some of you is because it has been purposely removed, mitigated from education, academia, from media. Globalism isn't dead because its agents have vanished. It's dead because its claim to inevitability has been broken. And once that sense of determinism or inevitability is broken, the system can be seen. You can see it. You can understand it. And it can be resisted. And it can be defeated. It has been defeated. At least 3 times before in America's history, it has been defeated. If we pay attention and support those who are dismantling it today, then we can defeat it again. The only question remaining for Americans then is this: will we be managed as economic units, or will we live as moral agents capable of self-government? And that brings us to the first point. We're going to talk about Dolly Parton died now 2 days ago. And we're going to talk about the Lindsey Clancy murder case. Because the big question there is, there's no question, or she admits that she killed her 3 children. The question is she guilty of murder? And it brings up all kinds of interesting questions that benefit a Christian to try to answer. Okay, Summer, are you still there?
I am here.
We're in different rooms. We are in the same building, but we're in different rooms tonight. Summer, before I start Justin Peters' post, why don't you update people on what happened when you posted about Dolly Parton yesterday? Just a few, just a little bit, just a few. Just give the people a sense for the reactions you got.
Yeah, when I tried to, make some humble posts about, we can't really rush to celebrate this in the way that people are, because there's a troubling legacy that she's had. And specifically when it comes to children and her library, Imagination Library is what it's called. We know it very well because it's in our own building where we have our studio. And so because of this, we were aware of Dolly Parton's connection, her children's library, with Smart Start and Pritzker, and how that ultimately all ends up with preschool-aged kids getting books that are in support of LGBTQ initiatives, same-sex parenting, and then, of course, with Pritzker and her network, that would then also make her co-belligerents with the trans community and the trans agenda. And also, as we dug deeper into this, even since she passed away, then finding out that it went even way deeper than what we knew about, actually. So all the way to the Globalist Project and Sustainable Development Goals and social emotional learning, all of that intertwined together. So I was trying to make some comments there on Instagram, letting people know there's some problems here, folks, and people just jumped all over me.
And that's because millions of people, when they heard that Dolly had died, millions of people were, gushing over her and ushering her right into the kingdom.
Right. And so the point was that when the day that she passed, all day, it was just, I didn't see a single person out there on Instagram, for example. That I wasn't on Twitter, but on Instagram, I didn't see anybody bringing up the points that we were raising. It was all just, unbridled support.
Yes. Well, we're gonna look at that now, because the question then is ultimately, is Dolly a Christian? Because a lot of people, like I said, people ushering her right into the kingdom, that she was a great Christian voice, a strong Christian voice out there, at a time when Christianity has fallen out of dominance, out of favor in the West generally, but also in America. So Justin Peters did a video on this, and we'll let him introduce it, and I will jump in and do some commentary as we go here. Was Dolly a Christian? That's the question.
Peters, I hope that this finds you and your family doing well today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Dolly Parton has indeed died, and she was beloved by many, many, many millions of people all around the world. And she was one of those rare individuals that very little negative was ever said about her. And she received praise from people of all walks of life and from both sides of the political spectrum. She was praised by those on the left, praised by those on the right, and people on both the left and the right seemed to claim her as one of their own. And many Christians have claimed her as one of their own as well. And today, the day of her passing into eternity, many have ushered her right into heaven, including some pastors. Let me just give you one example of this real quickly. This is from Pastor Travis Johnson, and he is posting a video of Dolly Parton singing this song titled "He's Alive." And he says, Dolly Parton is more alive than she has ever been. She came to faith at a small country church under her grandfather's preaching. Never despise small churches or prayer. Pray for family during this time of loss. She is one of the last American icons of a generation. So the claim certainly is, and many believe, that she was a Bible-believing Christian, as if there's any other such kind of Christian.
I like that part. As if there's any other kind of Christian. All right, so that sets the stage. So what are we supposed to think? Right. So as I was telling Summer yesterday, that whenever, when she, was just trying to remind people that there's, hang on before we canonize Dolly Parton here. Let's look at what she accomplished aside from her great success as an artist. What else did she do that was significant? So I was telling Summer that you're in very good company to receive harsh criticism for taking the position that you took. And by the end of this short segment, I think you will see that Summer was in good company as well.
But I do have questions and legitimate questions now. Don't turn me off too quickly, because we need to let Dolly speak for herself. Dear friends, just because someone sings a Christian song just because someone claims to be a Christian does not a Christian make. Dolly Parton espoused views that were diametrically opposed to biblical teaching, particularly on the LGBTQ, the alphabet people and homosexual marriage. Watch this video clip. I'm going to show you a couple of clips from an interview that she did with Larry King. This one, I believe, was dated 2016, but he asked her about this issue. Watch this.
Didn't you recently, throw support to the LGBT community?
Oh, I'm always encouraged. I'm not encouraged. They've made me the poster child, I think, only because I'm so outspoken as far as just being accepting of people in general. I do not believe that we should criticize and judge other people. I think we should be accepting and loving. We are all God's children. We are who we are, and we should be allowed to be who we are.
Okay, we're all God's children. We should all be allowed just to be who we are. That's the position of, let me get Justin a little better pause there. It's not good.
Not so good there.
Yeah. I'll put it back over here on her. There we go. Yeah. So how do we deal with this? She said, and Summer has a lot of the receipts on this. If I can find them. Yeah, here's one. As Summer said, where our office is, there is a Smart Start chapter in our office building where we have our studio. And can you summarize what Smart Start is, Summer, since you've been looking into it? I don't want to.
Oh, that's all right. So, yeah, Smart Start is a Pritzker enterprise, heavily known.
You say
for
Pritzker, we're talking about Pritzker as in governor of Illinois. Mm-hmm. As in his brother, who was I forget his position. He was
JB and MK Pritzker.
JB Pritzker, who's now known as Jennifer Pritzker. We've shown you that graphic many times.
A trans man.
Yeah, I don't really want to see it anymore, but it's a man dressed up like a woman. Mm-hmm. And that is sort of the power and the money behind the Smart Start program. And basically what they do, I think, Summer, right, is they provide reading materials and preschool training, getting kids ready to go into school. Right.
And their program is about think babies and 0 to 3. So they want to get to the child like as soon as possible, like in the womb even, think babies 0 to 3, and start inculcating them with basically the Sustainable Development Goals approved moral set of values, which is meant to replace biblical values.
Exactly. So what Smart Start is, it's part of the whole social and emotional learning movement that has taken over public education in the United States. And what it is really, it is an alternate spiritual system. An alternate system of spiritual formation. And what's really funny is the people who support that are the same people who will invoke the First Amendment and separation of state and religion.
Mm-hmm.
They'll use the First Amendment to try to make the case that you can't have the 10 Commandments in a public school, while they're running this alternate system of spiritual formation. The other side of Dolly's legacy, how the Imagination Library carried progressivist ideas about family identity and childhood into millions of homes. Summer writes here, we can't join the rush to celebrate Dolly just yet, not without acknowledging a troubling part of her legacy. There's Matthew 18:6, which is very important right here. Let's full screen that one. This is the from Matthew, and we also hear this, I think, in all of the Gospels. The idea that if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, Jesus speaking, by the way, to stumble. It would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Matthew 18:6. So then the charge would be, how is she causing little ones to stumble? Her imagination library was not ideologically neutral. Let me throw this. I grabbed this graphic too that you made, Summer. I know. There you go. So just to help you see, to follow, you could kind of follow the pattern here of how it all works. Her imagination library was not ideologically neutral. The program distributed LGBTQ blah 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 inclusive children's books to preschool aged children, including Families Belong, which depicts a same-sex couple raising children. So that's really what it's about. A spiritual formation system that wants to train children that this is just normal, and not just normal. This should be celebrated. In fact, it should be normalized. Its broader catalog incorporates woke themes of diversity, inclusion, social and emotional learning, programming, emotional regulation as a part of that, mindfulness, right? We've pointed out how the social and emotional learning movement is really grounded in Eastern mysticism.
Right.
Ideas of identity and environmental interconnectedness, which overlap with the priorities of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and its broader global citizenship project. So the idea here is that therapeutic language conceals the fact that moral formation is taking place. Right here. Children are being taught what a human being is, right? Remember what we just said, that the base conflict, in our world.
Worldview.
It comes down, right? It comes down to, basically it all boils down. There are two religions in the world. It's either divine accomplishment or human achievement, right? You're loyal to one or the other of those two. Divine accomplishment or human achievement. And as far as the way societies are organized, two systems. One that sees man as an economic unit, just an evolved animal to be managed and controlled to serve the extraction system, and the other one, of course, which sees man as created in the image of God. So that's why, this is so important, because it's really obvious what's going on here. Children are being taught what a human being is, what constitutes a family, where moral authority resides, what attitudes are virtuous. So defining virtue and how they should understand themselves in relation to society. Calling those lessons SEL or well-being or inclusion or belonging does not make them worldview neutral. There is no neutrality when it comes down to ultimate things.
Yeah, that's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand. Even I have a friend who I grew up with who's a teacher, and I had to inform her about this, that this was a spiritual program. Like, she just thought it was, secular neutral, which is the big deception that they've done. And because really they're inculcating people with, like you said, a transcendental sort of Eastern mysticism, which is like a Christ consciousness. So you would have Oprah Winfrey, or the universalism of Dolly Parton's position, this other Jesus. It's a false Jesus. It's a Jesus that's an idol.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So
a Jesus that is an idol. They do talk about Jesus there, but he's one of many others.
Well, it's not the Jesus of the Bible.
No.
It's the neutered Jesus. It's the social justice Jesus.
The acceptable. It's the acceptable version.
The version that you get in He Gets Us campaigns.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely that one. So you should come over to Substack to get more of the details on this.
Yeah, the other article, so I put 2 articles out on it, and the next one that I put out was, it's called Dolly Parton Transgender Advocacy an early childhood network. That one is the second one that I put out where I just realized that I had to even go deeper. And that's where it's a really fascinating one. If you just want, it's kind of long, but if you just want to browse it, and basically it like the map shows, it goes all the way to the Rotary Club. It shows how at the local level, if you see Rotary Club activities, that is the UN Sustainable Development Program in your local town. And so just tracing how her Imagination Library links up with other early childhood development programs, and they do that nationally, and they embed themselves, and how it's, again, it's think babies from womb until 3. So they're starting even younger, before kindergarten. And then how they can network with the, organizations like the Rotary Club in the local community. And then from there, she had her program was actually in 5 different countries too, throughout what she would know as the Anglosphere. So she had this program that also, you could see how that works, how she made it to be actionable and on an internet at an international scale, and also how the degree of radicalized books was dependent upon what those particular local areas would tolerate. So, internationally, we know that internationally, because they don't have the United States Constitution protecting them, even things have gotten so bad as they have here in the United States, still particularly within the British Commonwealth of Nations, they're much more advanced as far as the woke stuff. Because why? Because they don't have the protections that our Constitution gives to us, and we're still holding as a Christian nation. They've already just totally said, we're not doing that anymore. And so you see them more heavily influenced by wokeism, if you will, by the critical theory and social justice movement. And so their books that the Dolly Parton Imagination Library have over there, they have like books that are more radicalized, more into the environmentalism, and pushing the themes harder with inclusivity and diversity and all of the points. So it just shows you that through gradualism, Fabian gradualism, this program, this is how it gets in, and it basically pushes the bar as far as it will go, as it will be tolerated, and then it just keeps nudging forward from there, independent upon which region is, how much they've gotten away with is how intense the program or radicalized the programming can get. So, this is really a very real thing, and it's just pretty astounding to see that this article has the receipts. So I would encourage any of you out there, share this article with people if you know anybody that's in local government, because it's universal. Like, once you understand the basics, what to look for, the language, and how the system works and how it infiltrates, it's really easy. Like, speak with your pastor, speak with, go to a local government meeting and show them this information, and just say, look, if you don't believe me, follow it up, like look it up for yourself. But at least they'll have touch points, because we've experienced when, Brad and I, we wanted originally to bring in a speaker about the infiltration of critical theory into schools, and that didn't work out. But we were able to determine that there was, amongst pastors in our area, there was like people were really interested. Like, they just didn't know, they didn't have an actionable, like, what do I do? So I think something like this article could be really powerful for you guys out there to just take it and then, let people look into it for themselves, because you can find this. Like, this is not hidden. And I think people are really, I think they would do well to get this information out there.
Yeah, that's well said. I think that's important, because you're probably going to run into people. I don't know. We're coming up on the weekend. If you get together with family, maybe you have already heard this at work, where.
Well, yeah, it's like, now's the time, because Dolly just passed away. So it's like, hey, did you know? Blah, 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 blah,
I know. And then, you know what? It's difficult, right? Because even my own family members, they're just not aware of all of this.
Right.
And have only seen Dolly as this character, or this caricature, out on TV, her music, 9 to 5, stuff like that.
Right, but
so
she really was. She was teaming up though with transgender and openly supporting transgender surgeries, saying that she has friends and family members that are transgender, and so
yeah, that's
yeah.
what actually you had in the article. I was going to read this part from your article right here. That said Dolly Parton's support for the transgender movement was not merely inferred from books associated with her literacy program. She stated it publicly herself. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue listening to her say her own beliefs. In 2023, when asked about Tennessee legislation restricting gender transition medical treatment for minors, Parton said that she had transgender people among her family. Well, I think we all have sinners in our family. I think we have them in our own selves. But you're right. So she's got sinners in her family. So what's interesting is that what she's saying right here, and what you'll commonly hear from other Christians too, is there seems to be certain sins that we shouldn't call out. Certain sins that, well, this is just who that person is. So we should support that. We should affirm that particular sin, because that
Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law, right?
Yeah, that particular sin is sacred. She says she's got transgender people in her family and her employees, and that she knew and loved them, and that their transgender identity was simply who they are. She argued they could no more change that reality than she could change being Dolly Parton. Really. So, again, it's just like you hear with Alcoholics Anonymous. You're an alcoholic and you can't change that. You have a disease and you can't change that. Not even God can change that. So what religion is that, really? Dolly argued that they could no more change that. Okay. And said that she placed judgment of the matter in God's hands. Well, yes, certainly. Yes. But we are commanded to discern things here. Years earlier, she had also said that transgender people worked within her companies and described herself as completely accepting of them. We're not saying that you don't accept or love the person. You see, that's where the black and white thinking clouds all of this. Nobody's saying that we don't love that person or accept that person. Like,
well, and also God is love.
We want to help that person.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just, in the Bible, God is love. And if you don't know God, you don't know love. And the way that you love people is you tell them the truth. You don't affirm them in their sins.
Indeed. Yeah, that's well said. I don't think we could say that any better. So let's go back to this. And there are a couple more clips of Dolly speaking that we want you to hear, and we'll respond directly to them. And of course, we'll see what the Bible has to say about all of this. Let me find my timestamp here. Well, I was actually supposed to do this next, as far as the transgender stuff goes, and she goes on to say exactly what we just said here, that she's accepting of them. Right here in Romans chapter 1. Let me make sure where my passages are. We're going to definitely... It's Romans 1, 18 through 32. Tell you about everything you need to know about all of this. Let me read this for you, because I want to tell you something that is almost always overlooked. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. It's not the version. That's not the version I want. Let me go down here and let's just get the old LSB up here. There we go. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in their unrighteousness. See, we like to suppress the truth. We like to suppress the truth about God because a holy God is inconvenient. A wrathful God is inconvenient. A God who would bring his wrath upon us here and now is very inconvenient to us. But we do this. We suppress the truth because that which is known about God is evident within them. He placed eternity on our hearts. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, both his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has made. So this is talking about general revelation, or how we can see God in the natural world. And then it comes here. It says, for even though they knew God, they did not glorify him or give thanks to him. And because of that, they became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish heart was darkened. That's the big one right there. Foolish heart was darkened. That means you no longer are you able to discern clear good from evil. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for idols. Exchanged God for idols. And therefore God gave them over to the lusts, gave them over in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored. I'm going to come back to that one in just a minute, but right here's where we want to focus for Dolly. For this reason, God gave them over to dishonorable passions. For the females exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way also the males abandoned the natural function of the female and burned in their desire toward one another, males with males, committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. That's a big one right there. Receiving in the persons the due penalty of their error. So what does that mean? It means that there's something even worse than God's wrath in hurricanes, floods, and natural disasters. And that is when God withdraws his grace from a nation or a person, an individual, and gives them over to their desires. Gives them over to a debased mind. Far worse than natural disasters is when God withdraws his grace from a person. And that is really the only way you can describe the transgender movement. A man believes he can be a woman and vice versa. All right, let's go back to Dolly. And this is what Justin also describes this too. Here's another clip of Dolly right here.
Let's continue.
Did any of the faith-based communities that deeply believe the other way take umbrage with you?
Oh, absolutely.
They did?
Oh, yes. I get it all the time. I keep saying, well, if you're the fine Christian that you think you are, why are you judging people? Why are you, that's God's job. We're not God. We're not judges. You know, we're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to not judge, and we're not supposed to take vengeance on other people. That's God's job. So I got too much to do of my own, try to do God's work too. I mean, not to, to get into trying to do all that. So yeah, I suffer for everything I do. I'm not out to make any, I just think that we should be more loving, more caring. We are who we are. If you're gay, you're gay. If you're straight, you're straight. And you should be allowed to be, how you are and who you are.
How about that? There was a part in there that I'd missed until right now, and she said, I suffer for everything I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I caught that too.
She suffers. What is she suffering for? She's suffering for her identity. She's suffering because it's difficult to maintain that worldview in God's reality. Let me show you here what 1 Corinthians 6 says to wrap this matter up. All right, so go over to 1 Corinthians. Let's get back over here. Let's go full screen on that. I'm sorry about the squareness of that, but we're not in the studio tonight. Things will be a little bit off. All right, so 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and we're going to be looking down at verses 9 through 11. Or do you not know that the unrighteous, all right, we already defined who the unrighteous are in Romans 1. Those who substitute God with some idol, some other idea of God even. The unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God. Do not be deceived. There you go. Do not be deceived. Okay, do not be deceived about what? Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor the effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. That covers about all of us, right? It's why people, when we talk about this topic, a lot of people like to focus in on homosexuals or effeminate or adulterers. But this is all of us, right? We have all lied. We've all been greedy. I mean, we all revile at times. We all have done that. And Paul is saying that if that is your identity, if that's what you identify with, you will not inherit the kingdom of God. That's what separates a Christian from the rest of the world. Our identity is in Christ. We're striving to be more like him. And here comes the good news. And such were some of you. That's the good news. That should give you cold chills. Such were some of you. But you were regenerated. You were changed. That's not your identity anymore. You were washed and you were sanctified. Sanctified, right? First of all, if you are in Christ, you were immediately positionally sanctified apart from the world. And then throughout your life, you will be progressively sanctified through the process of experiencing trials and responding to them faithfully. That's how we grow spiritually. But you were sanctified. You were justified. Counted as not innocent, but not guilty of your nature as a sinner. You were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and in the Spirit of our God. So, what's important here to remember is that these are not secondary issues. These are core doctrines. These are the defining characteristics of one who is a Christian, one who is not a Christian. And Paul reminds us of that right there. In many other places too, but that one, that passage specifically. And he reminds us of this so that we would praise Jesus for the cross and praise God for redeeming and changing us, for regenerating us, for making us new creations, so that we're no longer identifying with those other things that the world finds good, fruitful. And here's another clip of Dolly. Summer, we definitely want to share before we get over to the Clancy stuff. We want to share her advocacy for the jabs, right?
Yes, this is good, meaty.
Let's just play this clip first. Yeah, meaty. It is. Listen to this, folks. In case you didn't know, maybe this will give you a different perspective on Dolly.
We begin the day with the impact of the late U.S. country music icon, Dolly Parton. Parton died in her home state of Tennessee on Tuesday from cancer. She was 80 years old. She was one of the biggest stars America has ever produced. But during the pandemic, she became something else as well, a trusted voice for science.
I have to stop. Dolly is the trusted voice for science. That ought to send up the red flags right there.
The science.
Mm-hmm. The science. The science. Not science, but the science. The approved version that we're going to make you believe right now.
Expert
she gave
class.
$1 million to COVID-19 research at Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
I think we stepped on it there. She donated over $1 million to
Vanderbilt.
Became something else as well, a trusted voice for science. She gave $1 million to COVID-19 research at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and then famously rolled up her sleeve there with a message to Americans.
I've been waiting a while. I'm old enough to get it, and I'm smart enough to get it. So I'm very happy that I'm going to get my Moderna shot today. And I wanted to tell everybody, I think you should get out there and do it too. I even changed one of my songs to fit the occasion.
Oh, boy.
It goes, vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. Because once you're dead, then that's a bit too late.
Well, I'm joined now.
Yeah, that's that doesn't give you cold chills. That makes you cringe.
I mean, that is like an SNL skit, except that it's not.
Yeah.
You know, like you're thinking it's a Saturday Night Live spoof.
Here's the other clip too. I think. Well, this is her just singing it again, but she says something about cowards, people who don't want to take the jab being cowards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's here or not, but she did say that.
And she never publicly repudiated or retracted her original support either.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you to clarify for everybody.
Don't be such a chicken squat.
Yeah.
Get out there and get shot.
Don't be a chicken
You
squat.
missed
Get
the
out
big
there and
drop,
get your
but
shot.
that's okay. Yeah, you could have backed it up just a hair, but if you
What's that?
backed it up a little bit,
Okay.
Please don't hesitate.
This is all I thought there was.
I know I'm trying to be funny now, but I'm dead serious about the vaccine. I think we all want to get back to normal, whatever that is, and that would be a great shot in the arm, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we want to get back to normal. Is that what you were looking for?
it's okay. It's enough. There's more, but you know, I did post those. Anybody that wants to take a look in the notes section on Substack.
Oh, you want to see? Yeah, I can do that. I can get to the notes.
All right. Okay.
Right there they are.
There's the
are.
drag queen stuff and the Playboy stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. So over on Substack, I'm telling you, the YouTube community posts and over on Substack, if you want to keep up with things daily as they're rolling out, Summer's always there, always putting out what's relevant for the day. I think I need to go ahead and like that. You know, give it a heart. Is that pretty much it? Oh, there's the other story. Hey, hit this one right quick before we get into Clancy. This story about the Girl Scouts. Always been a subversive globalist project to slowly destroy.
Jump on it. Open up that right there. I gave it a synopsis on the Red Green Alliance and the Muslim Brotherhood and, you know, how it ties in with the Lord Palmerston color revolution and all that. But yeah, this is wild. Like, have a browse through that. Read through some of that.
An exclusive investigation has uncovered a nationwide pattern of Girl Scout troops based at mosques incorporating Islamic prayer, Quranic instruction, and lessons on hijab into activities conducted under the Girl Scouts. Quote, a standout attraction was the hijab photo booth, according to the Salam Islamic Center's account as of February 2025. I've added 2025 Girl Scout event at its Sacramento mosque. Girls were invited to try on hijabs while learning about the significance of modesty. The event also included mosque tours and an informative booth about Palestine. Of course, the Girl Scout who organized the event said she wanted to share the mosque with the broader Girl Scout community. I'm sure she said that. Salam has not published a clear photograph of either booth. The materials presented about Palestine or any parent notice explaining the religious components. Summer, did you have is that picture of the American flag hijab in here?
Yeah, it's down there. Yeah, so basically this is not just an isolated thing. It's happening across the country through different Girl Scout places. It's not an isolated case, in other words. So there's a broader national pattern with Girl Scouts, Girl Scout programming being adapted to explicitly Islamic values and used in some instances for a vehicle for mosque-based religious education and outreach.
Yeah, so, okay. All of these things are connected because we will definitely explain to you how that is as we go. Remember, it boils down to one of two systems or worldviews that you're supporting wittingly or not. And that brings us into the Lindsey Clancy story.
Well, you were going to, before you do that though, can you just show the post underneath that? Because I just want to show
Underneath what exactly?
the one that was beneath that article in Substack notes about Dolly Parton, just with the transgender.
Go back to the Substack notes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's down here.
Just so we don't break that thought, because we'll probably move on.
Okay, how far down?
It's literally under the article
This one?
about the Girl Scouts.
Oh.
You're way far too down.
Okay.
It was underneath the Girl Scout article.
Okay.
Oh, did you refresh?
I don't know. I'm just scrolling.
It's funny because yours always looks different than mine for some strange reason.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the Dolly Parton posts where
Which one?
she's in her
Well, they're all-
drag
yeah,
drag
they're up-
queen, honey.
Yeah,
Drag.
they're up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drag. It's Satanic Feminism. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she went incognito to a drag show. It was a Dolly Parton look-alike contest, and she lost. She lost because she didn't look enough like Dolly Parton to win. We were talking about this earlier, and it's fascinating because this is, we talked about this a few years ago when we were sort of laying the foundation for the philosophy behind all of this. And aside from the man dressed up like a hooker, like a,
We know about Drag Queen Story Hour.
right. It's like, when the idea of simulacra and simulation. Jean Baudrillard wrote about this. It's, think of like a map. You look at a map and it represents the territory. It represents the real world. It's supposed to represent the real land. But as you create more and more maps, your vision of what the real land or the real thing looks like or really is like becomes more and more distorted. Think of it like the more copies you make of a document, it loses its quality over time. And so this is funny because she goes to a Dolly Parton look-alike contest. And the crowd, I think, what did you say? Did you tell me how the crowd, didn't even respond really to her?
Well, it says right there, Parton went and entered the Dolly Parton lookalike contest in secret and lost. She received the least applause and came in last because she wasn't Dolly enough.
That's it. That's because her image has become a simulacra. It's not even connected to her anymore. It's gone on to take on its own life form.
And then the other quote there is that it's a good thing I was a girl, or I definitely have been a drag queen, is what she's quoted as saying there. So, I mean, yeah. And so again, she's got Dolly's Imagination Library. She's connected with Pritzker, which is connected to the trans agenda. She's the library itself had books on everything basically coming out of, the Sustainable Development Approved morality that's trying to unseat God's morality. So this is dark. This is really, really dark.
I find that really interesting what she said too, because the truth will always come out when you're not paying attention. She said, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. She's affirming people
hang on
their
a second.
sin.
Listen to what she says. It's a good thing I was a girl, or I definitely have been a drag queen.
I know.
What that says is being a drag queen is a bad thing. She doesn't even realize, I think, that that's coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, that's
she said,
true.
It's a good thing I was a girl, or I would have been
Yeah.
just like you, which would have been a bad
Right.
thing. So
Right.
it's all about keeping her, we talked about it earlier. She's probably a shrewd businesswoman, and her main interest is her image and her business. Seems to be that because she didn't want to offend anybody that might spend some money on her image or her products.
Right.
Her
And
music.
so, and then the other picture, if you want to toggle over to the arrow, use the arrow there.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So she first appeared on the October 1978 cover of Playboy. And then the big, obviously, so there you go. I mean, okay. And then in 2021, she deliberately recreated the image supposedly, for her husband, but she shared the reenactment publicly on social media, of course. And she also continued to treat that 1978 Playboy cover as part of her public brand, and she sold merchandise so she sold shirts with that image on her official merchandise store inside of it. So, is this really a Christian woman? Is this what we think of when we think about a Christian woman?
Well,
No,
that's certainly up for
is
debate. And
this is the appropriated version of Christianity, but this is not a Christian woman.
No, this is a character. And you can see in this graphic, Summer has satanic feminism. That's not just a flippant sort of moniker there. We've talked about this here before, and I thought I would pull this
right, because ultimately
document up here.
When we were talking a couple of years ago about the trans movement, what's so sinister about it is that women that affirm all of this drag queen stuff are basically affirming the, omission or the complete annihilation of women in general. That's why, you look at what's happening in basketball right now, right? So it's like, we're not even protecting women from men in the game or in the locker room. So that's ultimately, by being supportive of all of this gay stuff, you're asking women to affirm all of this stuff that men want to do to be women, but then you're actually putting women's rights in danger. You're putting women in danger. So it's actually like a self-extinction thing too.
And it's impossible. A man can't be a woman. You can't change your genetic makeup.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's warfare. It's warfare. It's gender warfare.
So the idea of satanic feminism, we'll give you just a brief introduction to that, and to show you that this is a term that points to something real. Satanic feminism. This is something that was a show that we did, and this is the document that I made up in preparation for the show. Satanic Feminism and the Frankensteinian Rebellion, the Sorrows of a Disenchanted Identity. And if you were with us 2 shows ago, I was explaining to you that, about the disenchanted world, the disenchantment of Western civilization anyway, that created the circumstances that we have now. The early feminist movement, particularly as expressed in the literary and philosophical circles surrounding Mary Shelley, represents an embryonic form of what scholar Per Faxneld has termed satanic feminism. The symbolic reinterpretation of Lucifer as a liberator against the tyranny of Christian patriarchal order. Shelley's Frankenstein is emblematic of this broader rebellion, a Promethean anti-creational narrative that seeks emancipation, not through redemption, but through revolt, through rebellion. Rather than producing true freedom, this rebellion has led to a deeper confusion, disintegration of identity, and the mechanization of human nature, an arc that traces directly to today's crises of gender identity and meaning. Understanding this rebellion through the theological, philosophical lens, through someone like Francis Schaeffer, for example, the work he's done, clarifies that when the grace of the Creator is forsaken and nature or human will is enthroned as ultimate, dignity and liberty inevitably collapse into monstrous distortion. This was interesting too, this work that the researcher did for this, going back and looking at Mary Shelley and Percy Bysshe Shelley, and how this was how they were inspired by Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, who this is the idea of Frankenstein. It's like remaking yourself or bringing inanimate matter to life. And that's what Erasmus Darwin was putting forward. I can't remember the term. It's vital materialism, I think it is, that you could somehow bring inanimate matter to life. And that's what Erasmus Darwin was famous for at the time, and people really loved him and loved his ideas. So anyway, that's a bit about satanic feminism, which brings us naturally right into the next topic, which is the supporters of Lindsey Clancy. Lindsey Clancy, of course, is the mother who is standing trial, not standing, sorry, she's in a wheelchair now because of what happened there. She is on trial for killing. She's actually on trial for murdering her 3 children. That's what they're trying to prove, is murder. And supporters have shown up on her side to support her. Right? That somehow this is a result of the patriarchy and pressure.
An astounding show of support today for Lindsey Clancy. Hundreds of women, all dressed in pink, cheered the accused mom as she arrived in a police caravan for her murder trial. Supporters ran across the field to greet Lindsey. Some came with their babies. They held up heart hands during a silent rally for the mom who strangled her 3 young children, then jumped from the 2nd floor window, leaving her paralyzed for life.
It's a buzz around here, guys.
Fox News legal analyst Chanley Painter, a former prosecutor, actually wore pink in her live report as she spoke to Lindsey's defense attorney, who was greeted with cheers.
Hey guys, what do you think of the support for Lindsey Clancy out here?
I have no words.
No words?
It's amazing.
It echoes last year's Free Karen Reed campaign. Those supporters also wore pink. She was acquitted of murdering.
Hang on, did you see that?
Free Karen Reed campaign.
Okay, so at the Clancy trial location, the feminists are out there making the little heart sign with their fingers, and then here we have this.
It's insane.
And that's historically that's known as the cornuto, or today people call it the devil horns, or that, I don't know. I know in Hawaii, hang loose is something like that, which doesn't mean anything satanic, but and this is not at the University of Texas, so they're not doing hook 'em horns here. That's weird. I never caught that before. But anyway, let's go over to Spencer Pratt, who gives a breakdown of this, and then we'll get into this and talk.
And we do have an article as well up on Substack about this, which I dropped in the chat for you guys to check out.
Okay, good. Yeah. Where did I go? Yeah, I want to show the article quick too. If I go here, I can get to it probably, right? Yeah, Summer has made some articles here. When pathology becomes permission. Yeah, right here. This is good. I'm going to make sure we get this one featured up here too. Again, our Substack, armoroftruth.net, will take you right to this awesome archive Summer has been building over a couple years now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the latest ones. When pathology becomes permission. You can't see that. There you go. Sorry. Lindsey Clancy, Modern Psychiatry, and the Collapse of the Biblical Moral Categories that once distinguished sickness from sin and explanation from excuse. This is deep. This is good work, Summer. This is I don't direct Summer and what to put up here. These are really her ideas, and that's why I'm saying good work, Summer, because I think this is exactly what needs to be highlighted right now. Is this concept of Lucifer the Liberator and the connection to feminism, that the Luciferian origins of the feminist movement. That is Casey Anthony right there. And what we saw Sunday when we were looking around at this topic a little bit was that she had put out a post, probably on Twitter or Instagram or somewhere.
Yeah. Well, whether
that she stands with Lindsey Clancy.
Right. So, I mean, whether or not she actually did that or not on Reddit, I don't know. It's been disputed, but the point is the overall huge reaction that it's generated in such a coordinated way that resembles Black Lives Matter movements. You know, like it's hard to believe that all of this is totally organic. So, you know,
well, that's because I mean, we can. That's a strong part of what we're going to be explaining to people throughout this. I'm not calling it a series, but this is what we're doing right now. Is that when you see a coordinated movement like this, I'm sure many of you already know, these things are coordinated. These things are operations of some kind. But where does it come from? Like, where does that idea of creating chaos within a nation or a group of people so that they will turn against themselves and become weaker and so they could be conquered, where does it come from?
Right, because
you'll be very surprised to find out where that comes from.
Right. We know that it's part of the playbook of divide and conquer. So, you know, men against women and races against other races, you know, straight people against gay people. It's like get everybody riled up against one another. There's like been a huge backlash of women being really, you know, like that men won't date these women now because they know that she supports Clancy. And, you know, just this whole thing where you're supposed to believe that now men and women are even more turning against one another. I mean, certainly that is the intent, that they're doing this, that they're giving it such a high octane volume right now. Like, I mean, everywhere is this story. And the reason it's there is because the algorithm is amplifying it.
Again, that is, and that's exactly the point. So that it can be amplified, so that it can create as much unrest as possible. I'll give you a teaser. What does the Lindsey Clancy feminist supporter movement, the Minneapolis Antifa, remember last year, Antifa, what is the Lindsey Clancy supporters, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, how is that connected to the Civil War? There you go. So you'll want to stay tuned to find out what that's all about. Ultimately, it's about weakening the United States of America. But where does it come from? We will explain that to you in detail. All right, so let's jump into this and let Spencer Pratt, he'll give a little breakdown here. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about the institutional psychiatry and what in the world is going on here, that there's even a question as to whether or not this person should be held accountable for killing her 3 children.
The internet was a mistake. We have officially broken bad. Recently, a married mother of 3 young children was grappling with postpartum psychosis. Not just depression, but psychosis. She was committed to a psych ward for a brief stay, but she lied her way out of it and made her way back home. When her husband left the house to go get food, she took her 3 young babies into the basement, lined them up, and one by one, wrapped an exercise band around their neck and strangled them to death. Now, strangulation is very difficult, even with a toddler. It takes a lot of force and a lot of time. It's a very intimate way to kill somebody, which is probably why she turned the kids face down as she did it. She didn't have to watch the life drain out of their panicked eyes as she choked them out. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes to choke a toddler to death, so the 3rd child had to stand there and watch their siblings die for about 10 minutes before it was their turn. After Mama had finished killing all of her kids, she promptly went upstairs, slashed her own wrist, jumped out the 2nd floor window to off herself. Well, the snow outside cushioned her fall, the cold slowed her vitals, so she merely fractured her spine, paralyzing her, but she ultimately survived. When her husband came home with dinner, he called out for the kids and his wife. Nobody answered. He went upstairs thinking maybe she was bathing the kids. When he got to the bedroom, he saw blood splattered everywhere and the window wide open. To his horror, he saw his wife on the ground outside paralyzed. He asked where the kids were, and his heart sank when she murmured, "In the basement." He was on the phone with 911 when he discovered his dead babies. So there's a recording of his screams as he turned over his dead children, seeing their blue faces and their eyeballs nearly bursting from the sockets. The man naturally moved far away in a desperate attempt to reset his life somehow, and his wife is on trial for murder. And women on TikTok are supporting her. Go ahead, look around if you dare. You will see hundreds of psychotic women supporting Lindsey Clancy, blaming the husband.
All right, he did it. Patrick did it.
Lindsey Clancy is obviously not guilty.
He did it. He did it. Patrick's the one who did it. Not Lindsay. Patrick did it.
Lindsey Clancy's birth chart.
Just following all their birth charts and birthdays and zodiac signs.
I've already gone over the forensic astrology charts that show that the perpetrator is a male.
Women typically don't strangle.
I'm telling you all right now, when the South Node goes into Cancer,
He's a Gemini man. They poison or drown them.
I can't wait for this man to be humbled and for karma to do its thing.
Donald Trump.
Because, of course, in this dystopian social media era, everything is a conspiracy. Nothing is real. Bad things don't happen. Every real story is just fed slop. The real story is some convoluted, nefarious plot by the Jews.
What? That's so crazy.
Whatever the opposite of Occam's razor is, that's TikTok. We have lost our damn minds. I really think that COVID fried people's brains and that they've simply never recovered. We were gaslit to hell, of course. Dr. Tony Fauci, funded the development of the virus. He lied about the lab leak.
So it came from a wet market in the same place where there's this huge lab that does all the kind of development of exactly what this thing is. That's some coincidence.
They lied about the threat to kids. They locked everyone down.
I wear a mask to school. I wear a mask to school.
It was like some horrendous globalized Stanford prison experiment. Our institutions completely eviscerated their own reputation and dignity. Gavin Newsom locked us down and then had a fancy dinner with friends at the French Laundry. The science told us that if you went paddleboarding alone in the middle of the ocean, you needed to be arrested for killing grandma. But of course, if you riot with 500,000 people, that's totally fine because viruses take a timeout when it comes to social justice. Our institutions so thoroughly destroyed any semblance of credibility that they ever had, and frankly, they don't deserve that trust anymore. But we've devolved into a buffoonish, low-trust society where now people see conspiracy and malice in literally every corner of human life. Nothing is real, but everything is real. But beyond that is something darker. It's not just that we've allowed ourselves to believe the craziest things. It's not that we've just jettisoned our critical thought. We've lost our humanity. Look at the animals who people are now celebrating openly. Luigi Mangione shot a healthcare CEO in the back and communists celebrated him. Women openly gushed over him and still do. Even as he's pled guilty, they still simp for him. Now I know women have always been crazy. All famous murderers get love letters in prison, so it's not exactly a new phenomenon. But we can have a discussion about daddy issues another time. That's not what this is. This is something more sinister. What explains the outpouring of love for the mom who strangled her kids? Why are people trying so hard to exonerate her? When some criminal migrant masturbates in front of children at a public beach, the dads rightfully beat the shit out of him. But a woman suffering with suicidal empathy intervenes to protect and comfort that child sex offender? When you see an invasion of Spain, you see a woke woman gleefully waving the invaders in. Is this what matriarchy looks like? Where this kind of suicidal empathy that exploits the noble virtue of unconditional maternal compassion and perverts it towards the criminal dregs of society, all because wokeness now supersedes all normal virtue? We've heard that expression, it's a face that only a mother can love. I know I always heard it. We all know that unconditional maternal love, that superpower that God imbued into our mothers to make sure they loved us, irrationally loved us, so they didn't toss us into the damn river as babies when we're crying all night long for months on end. Their maternal love must supersede all reason and normal emotion in order to make sure that they can even make it through. But now that irrational love isn't pointed at our own vulnerable children. It's been reallocated towards whatever group the algorithm has designated as the vulnerable class. Criminal migrants, drug addicts on the street, any and all of the worst cretins of the planet get full feminine favor and protection as long as they're not the ultimate Satan, the white male. The hijacking of the maternal instinct didn't start with social media. It goes way back to 1995 when she watched Dead Man Walking as a teenager. When that film planted the seed that vile criminals deserve her heartfelt tears.
Don't execute this man. You can stop this from happening, sir.
Then Dexter injected it with steroids. This is the prolonged conditioning that accelerated with the ascendance of the Byronic hero. We got so cute with finding redeeming qualities in irredeemable villains. Gone are the days of the true bad guy. Now, the cinematic vanguard is in love with finding the humanity in the bad guy, telling the sympathetic origin story. Our parents had superheroes. We have anti-heroes.
You're goddamn right.
Breaking Bad was so brilliant, but it made us cheer on a narcissistic, murderous, criminal drug kingpin who destroyed his family over money. When Tim Burton did Batman, the Joker was a lunatic. But now the Joker gets his own movie where he's the hero, and the climax of the film is him murdering the orderlies at the asylum. The arts dog-walked us here over decades, with films and television that inverted the paradigm of normal virtue. Cops are the bad guys, outlaws are the heroes, and man, do you see that manifesting in reality today. Scrolling through Mommy Sleuth TikTok is an exercise in pure insanity. Whatever this woke social media blob has done to the modern mind, it's gone far beyond internet sleuthing, and it spawned an entire generation of hollow-out, depraved crazies. What about all the goblins celebrating the communists who shot Charlie Kirk? You have insane influencers making a fortune off shamelessly exploiting his death, tying themselves in knots with the most convoluted Rube Goldberg bullshit explanations to try and deny something we all saw in 4K and wish we didn't. It was an exploding mic.
He had a rigged microphone.
And they timed it precisely to the millisecond with the fake gunshot from the patsy.
The shaped charge was actually supposed to hit him in the chest.
There were Jews hiding under the grass. It was French special forces. Just the craziest, most unhinged shit imaginable. And people believe it. Anything but what actually happened. Anything but the most obvious, straightforward explanation. The woke communists you saw on camera who have prints on the rifle killed an anti-communist leader because communists are violent lunatics. That's it. We have a communist violence problem. But psychos on the internet have made an entire cottage industry around denying and exploiting it.
We're not morons.
But what's so much worse than these crazy conspiracies is how it drives people to abandon their basic human decency. It goes from just asking questions to demonizing a grieving widow, celebrating her husband's violent death. It's so much worse than just absolving the actual murderer and trying to sabotage the trial. These people have a bloodlust. What have you become when you celebrate an assassination like this? I don't care what your politics are. This was a father, a loving husband. You know, I was in D.C. in an interagency meeting when that communist shot Charlie. I was there advocating for the Palisades, trying to get things done to help us rebuild when everyone's phones started buzzing. Now, I never knew Charlie, but some of the president's cabinet members were with us, agency heads, people who were friends with Charlie and had worked with him for years, and they were devastated. It was one of the most grotesque and shocking moments I've ever seen in American history, but the reactions that followed were far more grotesque and reveal a sad report on where we are as a country. Teachers mocking his death, drag queens putting on assassination fashion shows. Who are these demons? What have we allowed ourselves to become? We have been so thoroughly demoralized, I fear that we can't get any lower. These things have fried our brains. Politicians have become full-time influencers and utter clowns, jester gooning instead of campaigning. We dress like slobs. We struggle away drug addicts defiling themselves on our streets. We celebrate murders and lawlessness with alacrity. We have no dignity anymore, and I don't know how we get it back.
All right. That's good.
When you came into the house and you were taking off your...
There's a lot there. And what we want to make clear to you is that what Spencer is describing is the result of something. How has it happened that inside the United States of America we have turned against one another this way? Color revolutions, right? It's a term that's a lot of people understand now. When inside a nation or a group, an idea is presented that divides the people, you know, a predetermined idea, an idea that's clearly going to create a division. Or you take advantage of something that already exists, some conflict that already exists within the group, and you use that to turn the people against one another. One of the ways that we're going to explain to you where that idea came from, this needs to unfold slowly, so that we can give you all of these points piece by piece in a multi-course meal, so you can digest it properly instead of just throwing it all at you at one time. We have to build this case slowly. So understanding the origin of the color revolution and how the United States has been divided, and we're in this position that we're in now where the democratic socialists, aka communists, are getting a real hearing out among the public. It's been a long-term operation, and it goes back to at least the Civil War. It goes back even further. We're going to explain to you who's responsible for that. You have to remember who has been our longest standing and most pernicious enemy since before our founding, right up until right now. And so part of understanding this is understanding the institutional psychiatry and where that idea came from. And Summer, I think you have some of this in your article too, right?
Yes, I do.
When
it's in that Pathology article.
Yeah, when pathology becomes permission. And the subtitle really lays it out well, right? How modern psychiatry, the collapse of biblical moral categories. Man, I'm not showing you this. There we go. The collapse of biblical moral categories that once distinguished sickness from sin. There you go. Distinguish sickness from sin and explanation from excuse. And this is a kind of a statement that we made about the Lindsey Clancy case. Murder is wrong. How do we get to this place in society? Humanistic psychiatry is weaponized by Fabian Vatican globalist faction to generate or socially engineer moral bankruptcy, societal degradation, and demoralization. If you guys remember when we brought up Yuri Bezmenov to you, Thomas Schumann, he's also known as, that was his new name that he chose once he defected from the Soviet Union, from India. He was there serving for the KGB in India at the time. And he defected to Canada. And then he came into the United States and began giving lectures on exactly how this process of how do you conquer a nation without firing a bullet, right? Sun Tzu, that's how the methods that Sun Tzu wrote about 2,500 years ago. And there were 4 steps. First of all, demoralization. Get them to forget about God. There is no ultimate. There is no God. Demoralization. And then that leads to destabilization. And then you create crises, or crises will emerge naturally when you've got the destabilization. And then after that, the 4th step is normalization. You start to normalize the new order. Well, that is understood broadly as a Soviet system, Soviet methodology. But they learned it from someone. And Summer has given some hints to it right here. We'll focus in for now on Fabian. Fabianism, the Fabian Society, comes out of London. Everything that has divided America, everything that divides America today, finds its origins in jolly old England. This is not a diatribe against the British people. It's very specifically against a faction within the UK. And that case has to be presented slowly over time so that you can digest all of it, right? Fabianism. This is where modern or institutional psychiatry comes from. There's Brock Chisholm, first Director General of the World Health Organization, who said, and we have a video. We put that video out on Monday, so that you would have a short, digestible bit to understand a little bit about what mental illness and that term, how it is used as a weapon, how diagnosis is used as a weapon against a society. Brock Chisholm, first director of the WHO, said to achieve world government it's necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, their loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas, of course. There is a flowchart that I can give you that helps you to understand how, in the Lindsey Clancy case, how this works out. Now, this is more specific to the Clancy case, but let me show you this one so we can understand how this works. This is a flowchart of a destabilization operation. You don't need to see me. Let's get this. There we go. Some evil act or social tragedy occurs. And then immediately, A leads to B. You start hearing psychiatric explanations, right? Anytime there's a mass shooting or something, one of the first things the media does is they start trying to diagnose him. What was his psychiatric problem?
Yeah, that flowchart is embedded inside the article, by the way.
Ah, good. Thank you for that. Let's see. I keep forgetting where I put the... Okay, here we go. Yeah, you've got... Summer has got me covered, and I just didn't realize it. Here's the article. Here's the video, the link to the video. If you come... It's on our YouTube channel, or you can go to this Substack article, armoroftruth.net. Very simple. Or download the Armor of Truth mobile app, and whenever these articles come out, you can get them right there in a simple app. If you download the Armor of Truth mobile app, you'll also get live notifications whenever we go live and wherever we go live, because it might not always be on YouTube. YouTube has really squashed us over the past 2 years. We have had the same subscriber count now for 2 solid years. It hasn't dropped. It just won't go any higher. Anyway, armoroftruth.net will take you here, and we encourage you to get the Armor of Truth mobile app. And there's all kinds of stuff there also that you can find. You can find an exclusive podcast version of a Bible study on the first chapter of James, and videos there as well. But here,
now, I did drop the link in the chat for anybody that wants to follow along with the article.
Okay, good enough. That'll work. So if you're following along, if you're playing along with the home game, we'll come down here to this where the text starts. Murder is wrong.
You can go down further if you would like. Under the video.
Okay. So let's start under the video. Said another way, murder is objectively evil. By the way, this video that's on YouTube, and you can also find it in the article, is, let's just play the first 30 seconds or a minute, because this is not us. This is a psychologist making the claim.
The controversy regarding the myth of mental illness and psychiatry is not about science or medicine. It's about power.
So what's the big problem here? The foundational presupposition of psychiatry as a medical science is fatally flawed. From the start, it assumes what must be proven.
Armor of Truth.
What do we know that is true, that the cult of psychiatry keeps telling us is false? The truth is, we cannot tell who is mentally ill and who is not by looking at pictures of their brains or analyzing their blood.
What does that mean? It means that emotional distress, addiction, disordered behavior, anxiety, depression, or social dysfunction are assumed to be medical illnesses. When you see mental illness out there, that's what they want you to think. They want you to think medical illness. They want you to think disease. This comes right back to Alcoholics Anonymous and the disease model, which we reject outright.
Psychiatrists today are the true grand inquisitors.
It's one of the most important worldview issues of our time, and that is the rise of therapeutic religion and the medicalization of the soul. Psychiatry, therapy, recovery culture, social and emotional learning in the schools, and Alcoholics Anonymous, addiction falls into the category of mental illness today. Also, alternative spiritual systems All of these have increasingly stepped into the place once occupied by the church. They're stepping into that role, the role of the pastor, the ministry of the word, confession, repentance, discipleship, the care of souls. And the problem is not that hurting people do not need help. And that is the disclaimer here. Don't hear what we're not saying.
Because the piece that's missing is who used to take care of the soul. This was the elders and the pastors to make sure that everything was well with the individual. And so when you try to secularize, you're going to an institution that actually doesn't have your best interest at heart at all. They want to see you coming in again and again, and they even want to weaponize it against you as well, whack you with the label, and then all manner of manipulation to get you to feel like maybe you're a victim, or maybe you have some sort of shortcoming, and live inside that cage, and even if necessary, then weaponize whatever that diagnosis is against you at a later point. In 1945, George Brock Chisholm, the man who would go on to serve as the first Director General of the World Health Organization, and the man who helped spearhead the World Federation of Mental Health, delivered an incredibly candid lecture in which he laid out his plans for steering the profession of psychiatry in a bold new direction. And this is 1945. Published in 1946, The Reestablishment of Peacetime Psychiatry. The lecture includes a proclamation that psychiatrists should take it upon themselves to rid the population of the concept of good and evil entirely. Quote, if the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility. This is the challenge that must be met. Where Marx aimed to liberate man through, quote unquote, false consciousness, Chisholm sought to liberate mankind from conscience itself. So the idea is this wasn't about mental health, but it was actually about mass psychological conditioning and the creation of a compliant society by erasing transcendent moral categories.
Appearing in the Campaigner magazine's 1978 expose on the Tavistock and John Rawlings Rees, quote, the theme of all Rees' known work is the development of the uses of psychiatry as a weapon of the ruling class. Yes. So we'll leave it right there. That's just the first 4 minutes. This is a 20-minute video. And then you want to add
you did
something?
a good job with that. I was just going to say that, society cannot rest in counterfeit social justice. It must rest in actual justice, biblical categories under God's moral law and mercy. And so that's why there's all this restlessness. Brad's been talking about restlessness. We can't find any rest operating off of this humanistic social justice, which is a complete ripoff of actual biblical justice. And so, you see society being ripped apart right now because of that, and our roles as female and male, and then it all comes back again to Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and her network, her early childhood development network that she was involved in. From the womb to 3 years old, think babies, like getting in there and starting to brainwash these kids with social justice values, which inherently is designed to be, it's like it creates an allergic reaction. When kids are brainwashed with this type of thinking, they actually have like an aversion to biblical morality. Because it's true. It's the satanic inversion that we're living in, where they've flipped good for bad and bad for good. And we say that a lot on this channel. I know you guys are well aware, but what's happening with people's reaction to Dolly dying, and then people's reaction to the Clancy case, and then even things like the fact that the policies in place have enabled the Girl Scouts to be infiltrated with Islamism, essentially.
Yes.
So all of these things, this is the battle of the two worldviews, and the big war that's going on right now. This is what Brad and I keep talking to you guys about, is that it's like the West is fighting with each other. Like it's basically the camp of people that want to be the globalists and want to measure man as an animal. Like Yuval Harari says that humans are hackable animals and we're just units to be managed, versus those of us who believe in our creator, that we are created with inalienable rights, that we get our rights from God. And so it really just comes down to this fight between the two. But of course, when you hear a lot of their language, it sounds therapeutic, it sounds clinical, it sounds secular. But indeed, it is indoctrinating people into a false world religion, again, that goes back to Alice Bailey and Helena Blavatsky, the externalization of the hierarchy. So I was telling Brad that for sure you can bet that when all of these things have been going on, particularly this week with this trial finishing up with Clancy, that they are keeping their eye on how are people reacting. They're able to keep tabs on that with social media and to determine how far gone is the population into our social justice worldview that is therefore in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals project.
Yeah, that's well said. That's a really good breakdown. And it's really important to understand how these things occur. It's also important to understand where they originate from. Right? Because again, our theme is that globalism is dead. This system, the responsible parties for everything we're describing right now have been identified. And at this time, there is a movement against it, to dismantle it, to remove its influence over the United States of America. More on that later. But for now, setting up this issue, we've set up the issue of institutional psychiatry, and basically, just so you, in a nutshell, mental illness, the idea of mental illness. Look, this is not to say that people don't struggle, have hard times, or have psychiatric problems. They just can't be identified and treated in the same way that medical problems do, right? Dr. Scheckler, in the clip we showed a minute ago, he says later on in that clip that it's very interesting that to have cancer or diabetes, there only needs to be one person present. In order to have a mental illness, you need two people, because you have to have somebody there to tell you that your behavior is unacceptable for what we have deemed to be civilized society.
The social contract.
Yeah, the social contract theory, which comes up from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was the patron saint of the French Revolution. Okay, so back to the Lindsey Clancy case, and how does all of this work? This is the flowchart for destabilization. The process follows a recognizable pattern, right? How the system appropriates tragic circumstances for cultural disarmament of America. I will define this term for you. There are 4 arms of cultural disarmament. We'll define that for you in just a minute, right? As soon as we go through this particular flowchart. So, an evil act happens, or a social tragedy, some impetus, and immediately psychiatric explanations come out. If you remember what Summer says at the top of the article in the subtitle, we can no longer distinguish sickness from sin. We can no longer distinguish explanation from excuse. This is what you see in the Lindsey Clancy supporters. They're looking for the excuse rather than the explanation. All right. Now, the way the process works is this. You have the tragedy that happens, and they come out immediately offering the psychiatric explanations, right? Explanations for which there is no scientific basis. Only social causes. And that's what Rousseau believed. that people are born into the world as basically a blank slate, tabula rasa. We're just empty canvas, and that society is what makes us who we are. All right, so after the psychiatric explanation, then this explanation becomes exculpation. Exculpation means the responsibility is removed. Responsibility for the act is progressively diminished. And then the actor or the agent, in this case, Lindsey Clancy, the one who committed the violent acts of killing her children, suddenly that person becomes the principal victim. This explains the Black Lives Matter color revolution process as well. This is how an idol is created for a color revolution also. All right? And so what happens is the actual victims, the children in this case, no one's thinking about them anymore. The actual victims recede. Their suffering becomes secondary to the new narrative.
Yeah, how many times have we heard people say, where we know her name, but we don't even know the names of the children. What about the justice for the children? There's no justice for them.
That's exactly right, because as I sit here now, without looking it up, I can't remember their names either.
No justice for the innocent.
But I know her name. Yeah. So see, this works. This happens to, even if you're aware of it, it still influences you. It works on you, right? And the result of all of this is that the tragedy advances in ideology. What's the old saying that we've heard? We take it back to Rahm Emanuel, one of Barack Obama's cohorts, one of his colleagues. And I guess we could probably take it back to Saul Alinsky, too. It sounds like something he would say, right? The tragedy advances in ideology. In other words, never let a crisis go to waste. Mm-hmm. And so then the interpretive control is established. Demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. Interpretive control is established. You control the meaning of the event, and you begin to control how society interprets reality.
Right. And so what you do is you're once again, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, that was another huge court case that would have freaked out people when their minds are forming, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, their minds are forming and they're like, oh my gosh, if I get married, what is this? This is crazy. And so this is, we have to think about it from that 80,000 foot view. They're in it for the long game. And what this is doing is it's like casting this dark spell over motherhood. Like that you might, like a lot of women are probably like, well, I don't want to ever one day feel compelled to do that to my kids. So maybe I won't have them. And then also the division that's been caused between men and women over this very volatile social media, catastrophizing scenario that they're totally blowing up, and the way that it's being, it's like a spell casting, and there's moral engineering that's happening from society, having to think about this thing over and over, think it over and over again, and so it's very dark. So it's sort of entraining into people that the deepest, darkest fears for what motherhood might end up being like, that you would go into a psychosis.
Yes.
And do something.
As we've just laid out in the flow chart, let's see, I forgot about, particularly in the Clancy case now, right here. That flow chart that we just gave you. Let me see if I can get them so I can go both of them. I'll just use this one as well. All right, so we just gave you this flow chart, how the evil act happens. Psychiatric explanation removes responsibility. The guilty party becomes the principal victim, becomes an idol. They no longer remember the victims. And then this tragedy advances the ideology. And then you have interpretive control over reality. In the Clancy case, pretty simple. Clancy suffered. Psychiatric explanation. The system failed her. That's why her children are dead, because the system failed her. That's Rousseau again.
Yeah.
Those are the seeds of communism, that kind of thought. All right? So the system failed her. It's the system's fault. The system caused the tragedy. Clancy now is the victim. She's a victim of society. She's a victim of the patriarchy. She's a victim of America and American values. And then accountability becomes cruelty. In other words, if you say that she killed her children and she must be held accountable for that, you're being cruel. Okay?
Right.
All right. So that's...
And that is the process of sin and forgiveness. I mean, they're interrupting the process of sin and forgiveness right here. That you would come to Christ and be forgiven for something, that Christ would forgive you. There's a message of hope out there. The gospel provides it. And again, society cannot rest in social justice because it's a false justice.
No
and
rest.
People will continue to be restless.
That's where the phrase "no rest for the wicked" comes from. And this is, we're not going to go into too much detail now because we are at the end of our show now. But just to set you up for where we're heading next, because we're telling you globalism is dead. And when we say that globalism is dead, what we're trying to tell you is that the system that has fomented all of this chaos that we're seeing, that we're reporting on here tonight, even relating to Dolly Parton, her idea of Christianity has been heavily influenced by this same movement. I'm going to call it a movement.
She was a poster child for that movement.
Well, right.
Quite literally, Dolly Parton, for the movement of social justice, essentially.
Well, the operations, the panic cycles, and the constant operation that's been run inside America by this particular system, by the extraction system, has so influenced the way we think that you have, Dolly Parton is now a hero.
Right.
All right. So, and part of this is the way, now moving back into the two systems explanation, right? There are only two religions: divine accomplishment or human achievement. And those lie at the foundation of the two systems that we see in the world, which are these. Now, hopefully you're going to be seeing this a lot. This will give a little bit of a breakdown, a little background to what we're going to be explaining to you, and I guess we'll just say we'll try to teach this to you, because we have spent the last year solid trying to understand whether or not this is really the case, whether there is an actual dismantling of the globalist system or not. And the reason we attach this to globalism is because this is the ideology underneath it. All right. So in addition to psychiatry, institutional psychiatry, which we note, we see its origin coming right out of the Fabian ideology, right out of London. The financial arm of this, the economic stronghold, the spiritual stronghold of economics or finance or global banking. The first term to remember is intermediation. Intermediation is where you get between the human being and the fruits of his labor. The very thing that makes it possible, that creates the feeling of rest. You get between that because you're going to extract from the labor to enrich and empower yourself. Intermediation. You can think of that as the income tax, for example, is intermediation. It's extraction. This system, right, there's two opposing systems. One of sovereignty versus interdependency. One of nationalism versus internationalism. It doesn't win by military conquest, right? The adversary does not occupy territory. It inserts a mediator between man and the fruit of his labor. In other words, the sources of life. Then he makes access to the system conditional. right? You capture the gates, credit, trade, law, media, and education. Convert independence into managed dependence. This turns free men into clients, debtors, consumers, turns them into data. You replace the covenant, right? When I say the covenant, I'm talking about the covenant that God made with man. That productive, honest, creative labor that honors God would produce fruits that would sustain you. And you would find rest in that. That covenant and that responsibility that we have to do that is replaced with administered access or managerial capitalism. So the key question then is, who stands between the person and his duty before God? Who is getting between you and the fruits of your labor? The two systems break down like this. We've got what we're going to call the beast, really the beast system, which is the extraction system, creates interdependency. In other words, that's what globalism is. Multilateralism is you're going to be interdependent on other nations for your survival. It is adversarial to mankind, to humanity, to God's designed order. It operates through extraction. It exists through an ideology or a view of man, a managerial anthropology, right? Man is a beast to be managed, an economic unit to be extracted from. Man is an animal, a resource. It operates through managed scarcity and creates restlessness. The British Empire did this, managed scarcity, to the colonists before the revolution. It's the real reason for the revolution. They wouldn't allow them to produce their own currency, their own hard currency. They restricted their shipping, but managed scarcity. So they required the colonists, to use British hard currency, which was scarce. So it restricted the colony's ability to industrialize and create their own prosperity. Okay, and then the other system that we've talked about that sees man as made in the image of God, is covenantal. That's speaking here about the covenant between God and man. It's productive. It's based on the production. What the people produce is what makes the nation, is what creates the wealth of the nation. Man is viewed as created in the image of God with moral agency. Man is not just a receiver or recipient of blessings. He is a steward of blessings. And that this arrangement creates a possibility of rest. This arrangement creates restlessness. The dispute is anthropological. In other words, what is man? What is man for? The dispute is anthropological before it is political or economic. This just means, as we always say, politics is downstream from culture. Culture influences politics. But theology influences culture. So in that stream of categories, theology is at the top. What you believe about God is the most important thing about you, because that will influence the culture. And then the culture influences what the politics and what the system of government would be. And now we move into the civilizational disarmament that I told you I would break down for you before we get off here tonight. The American system, which is this is what we're trying to explain to you, is attempting to recover it and establish it. And it is this: America won its political independence from British imperialism with bullets and blood, but the war for economic independence, even ideological independence, the war for independence in every other sense, never ended. The imperial doctrine of unrestricted free trade was an effective means or a weapon of control over the economies of the colonies. The extraction of wealth through financial intermediation was meant to prevent the colonies and the new republic from industrializing by controlling internal American markets. The American system is not simply a set of tariff policies. I should lay out that the American system, as Alexander Hamilton established it, was based on 3 pillars, which would be the protective tariff, which means that foreign markets have to pay a premium to participate in the internal markets in America. That protects industry. That protects Americans. It protects American workers and businessmen. All right. So the 3 pillars are protective tariff, internal improvements. That means you take the money from those tariffs and you improve your infrastructure. And you issue sovereign credit, not global private banking capital, but sovereign credit to people who are starting businesses or building industry. So protective tariff, internal improvements, and back to that sovereign credit, a public national bank, not a private central bank, globalist central bank like we have in the Federal Reserve System. So the American system is not simply a set of tariff policies or infrastructure programs. It was the economic architecture of a sovereign republic. It sought to unite public credit, private enterprise, productive labor, technological innovation, national development, and constitutional government in service to the common good, in service to protecting the covenant made between God and man. Its purpose was to preserve the political independence won in the revolution by establishing the economic independence necessary to sustain it. And how have they tried to tear that down over time? Through process of civilizational disarmament. The American system that elevated the republic to the most free and prosperous nation in history has been largely forgotten. That's what we said right at the top of the show. You've probably never heard about this. It's been intentionally obfuscated by a long-term process of 4 principles of civilizational disarmament. The first arm is monetary. Debase the currency. That's monetarism. Private central banking. Misdirection of sovereign credit, right? That's taking the wealth of a nation and using it to build the global system. The second arm is military. The nation's people and military power are conscripted into maintenance of the financial extraction system, and they are used as the enforcement arm. In this case, for today, European creditors. Back then, it was for City of London, British imperial creditors. The U.S. military, for the last 30 years, probably 50 years, since World War II, the U.S. military has been used this way for nearly 50 years by the extraction model's global banking cartel, or the liberal international order, or the rules-based international order. This is just another term for globalization. The third arm is institutional. So you have, this is where they get involved in the government. Regulatory, academic, and media infrastructure are captured by the extraction system. The preferred model of reality that favors the extraction system becomes the orthodoxy, because the American system, the system on which we were founded, it's slid to the side. Let's don't talk about that. That's not important anymore. So globalization becomes orthodoxy, right? It's the neutral expertise that can't be questioned, right? It is the new objective truth. And the people then are trained not to see this arrangement. Definitely not to see it as partisan and serving the interests of our enemy. And the fourth arm of cultural or civilizational disarmament is cultural. The most pervasive and invisible of these principles of extraction within the target nation, in this case, the United States of America. It dissolves the family structure, moral order, and theological framework. Remember, demoralization, destabilization. so that the people, the producing class, no longer have the vocabulary or moral categories to identify, rightly name, and resist what is being done to them. That's the foundation. The war did not begin in 1776. The war began over 600 years ago, approximately 650 years ago in Venice. I'm just showing you here some key differences between the two systems that I'm describing to you. This one, which sees man as an economic unit, a beast to be managed, and the Hamiltonian American system, which views man as created in the image of God, with inherent dignity, a mind worthy of cultivation, and that the fruits of his labor should be protected, not in service to this system. And as we'll show you in future shows where this came from, it began over 600 years ago in Venice. For 650 years, a model of financial empire has ruled without governing, extracting without owning, subordinating productive nations to creditor nations, or creditors, institutions even, through debt rather than conquest. They don't have territory and they don't have armies. They fund all of that. So in that sense, they control all of it. War is a managerial tool. And it's a good opportunity here to explain the difference, what we've always been taught. It's communism versus capitalism. And we want capitalism, right? Yeah, we want capitalism inside our nation. But the system that has been extracting from us is managerial capitalism. It is still a form of capitalism, but it has no moral foundation. That's the problem. That model migrated from Venice to Amsterdam, which is where you had the first global financial empire. And then that system migrated into London. That's the system that was in power at the time the colonies were established and at the time of leading up to and during the America's war for independence. That model migrated from Venice to Amsterdam to London, built the Bank of England, built the Federal Reserve System, and the institutions that govern global credit today. That's the proper genealogy of the architecture that has infiltrated and managed the decline of the American Republic through financial panics, philosophical dissolution, proxy wars, and the systematic removal of every statesman, president in particular, who ever tried to build a sovereign alternative. Anytime you've seen a president assert the American system, economic nationalism that puts the American citizen, the American worker, first, they have been eliminated. And by eliminated, I mean assassinated. And we'll be sharing this with you as we go forward. But here is a book that the people over at Promethean Action have put together, and this one's very helpful. This is, there we go. How the British are the ones behind at least 4 of the assassinations. We've had 4 U.S. presidents assassinated. There's a British connection to every one of them. Why? Because they must defend the extraction system at all costs. So this is the genealogy, the institutional architecture of what we'll just call the beast system, the extraction system that has been institutional orthodoxy in America for a generation. Hamilton understood it, Lincoln understood it, McKinley understood it, and each of them were removed. You can make the case for JFK as well, but keep it at those. This explains why Donald Trump his life has been threatened so many times.
Can I just interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
And it explains why we are under such rigorous propaganda right now, because they have to demonize anything that they can't allow people to recognize this Hamiltonian American system, and they have to demonize it. They have to call it protectionism and isolationism, and that tariffs are bad, and they have to give it a bad smell, like what they always do. But obviously, they've got still very powerful media. They control these mediascapes, the CNNs, the MS Now, the Atlantic, all of this. And it's the globalist media syndicate. And plus, not only are they on all the airwaves in that sense, but they have so many different influencer networks that we can go into another time. But there's definitely, I think, obviously people have become aware about like Candace Owens with Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. Like there is a ring of influencers. So there's that. And then there's the people that just sort of parrot everything that they hear because they don't. One of the greatest things that's happened is how they've tried to obscure the reality that the Trump administration really is taking down globalism. Like there is so much information out there to prove that is happening. If you listen to Greer, if you listen to Bessent, if you listen to Rubio, if you listen to Hegseth, they're all talking.
Read the National Security Strategy.
Read the National Security Strategy. When they speak at Davos, when they speak at the United Nations, when they speak at these different meetings around the world. And also, if you go to the Chatham House, and I recommend anybody who is skeptical, go to the Chatham House. Chatham House is the leading think tank for the globalist project. That all of the EU oligarchs, Davos people, they all follow this system, and they're talking about the fact that that globalism is over, that they have to adjust to a new world. And that's not because Trump is a part of it. No, he's actually using the weapons that we've used in the past to take down nations against them. Because why? Because we know the playbook, right? Our government used to be overtaken, in cahoots with the globalists. We were the big dumb giant for many, many years. But that's not the case right now. And people don't understand that. And as long as they don't understand that there's really a war between these two factions, the one that wants to keep globalization going and the one that wants to return to American sovereignty, then basically people are just not going to understand the map or the territory.
Yeah, that's well said. We could end it right there. Just drop the mic. But I will end it this way by telling you that there have been 3 iterations of this before, as we just said. Alexander Hamilton established it for the second time after the Civil War, but before the Civil War, in response to unrestricted free trade, weaponized free trade from the British empirical system. Henry, oh boy, is it Carey? Is it Carey or Clay? But both of them are involved. Yeah. Henry Clay, who were the ones he's the one that named it the American system. It didn't have a name. It was just considered the way to do business before then. Lincoln recovered it and expanded the American system under the pressures of the Civil War and national disunion. And the third was under William McKinley. At the end of the 19th and early 20th centuries, McKinley was killed in 1901. And his protective policies brought the American system to its most prosperous culmination ever through protective tariffs meant to offset the effects of imperial free trade ideology on American workers and producers, which fostered industrial development, higher wages, expanding production, and national economic confidence, with Americans holding a much stronger position in foreign markets. These 3 systems were successive historical applications of the same underlying principle. Those 3 pillars that I mentioned for you. A sovereign people must possess the productive, financial, industrial, and moral capacity to govern themselves. So what Benjamin Franklin said, you have a republic if you can keep it. And that brings us to today. And it will inform everything that we report to you here. The fourth, gosh, this thing is driving me crazy. The fourth American system. Is the first serious answer in a century. A first serious answer to imperial or unrestricted free trade in a century. Whether it holds, whether or not it's successful, depends on whether you and me, whether we understand what they're actually fighting against and how long that fight has been underway. Hamilton is the one who established the American system, but this story doesn't begin with Hamilton or America or with Venice or Amsterdam. It begins with Adam. The chain starts with Adam and the covenant that God made with Adam. It runs through Moses and Abraham. In fact, it goes back even earlier. It goes right back to creation itself. Because the American system is grounded in the moral law of God to protect the covenant between God and man. Again, that the fruits of your labor would sustain you. This is found back in the nature of God, who made the world and who made a creature in his image to tend it. Productive sovereignty is not an economic preference. It is the shape of the image of God expressed in human life. In other words, it is what man was made for. And more particularly, at this moment right now, what we see happening. This is, there's a sovereign trilogy here, and we'll be introducing Leonard Meyer to you more as we go, because as you can see, these books are dog-eared at this point. And it starts off with this, Outside the Gates, which lays the institutional architecture to show you who they are, how long this has been going on. Outside the Gates, the City of London and the American Republic. The second part of the trilogy is learning what is the American system, covenant economics, and the soul of the American Republic. And then today. If you're going to criticize Donald Trump, you're going to have to criticize him according to that, the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Meyer says the heart of the Republic will not rest until it rests in the work Providence assigned it. The Monroe Doctrine is the restoration of the American system and the extension of it. A principled framework of American sovereignty that names the adversary correctly, defines the boundary, and establishes the terms on which the Republic will engage the world. You see, for the last 50 years, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of globalization or the liberal international order, it has been determined that all nations will be interdependent on one another. That's what the United Nations is for, interdependency. And that finds its origin right out of London. So instead of having the globalist system define the terms on which we can engage the world, we will define the terms on which we will engage individual nations. So instead of multilateralism, it's bilateralism. We make our own agreements individually with other nations. This is not isolationism, and it's not empire. A lot of people are, criticizing America for being an empire. No, we were just an appendage of the empire.
Yes. And can I just interject here, because I know certain people will be thinking, hey, what about, the United Nations is still there? So when we answer that as in, yeah, we have had the United States has pumped an awful lot of money into that And so it's prudent to keep it and push out all the bad elements bit by bit, step by step. That is the intention of this administration, is to, the same way that they took over all of our institutions, we're taking back over these institutions and kicking out these bad elements step by step. So, for people that say, but globalism is still going on, the technocracy is still there, the Bilderberg is still there, Davos is still meeting. Well, just because a building is still there and there's still some bad elements in there doesn't mean that we're not in power, that the Trump administration is not doing everything it can, knowing all the tricks that they used to use against other countries to take them down and using them against them. So, we've talked about this ad nauseum with what they did in Venezuela and what they did in Iran. They are taking down the illicit dark money capital flows, and you can look into that.
This is something we'll explain in detail as to
Yes.
how this system has managed the world.
Yeah, because
for this
after
period of
all, it
time.
has been a financialization system like that. It has been an economic system. So we've had some pushback from some people saying, well, yeah, that's just the American system of political economy. That's just the economic system. Yeah, but in this world, that is how you go after your enemy primarily. You bankrupt them. You make sure that they don't have access to funds so that they can fight against you. And we know that, Europe has demilitarized itself. And guess what? The United States is in control of all the military stuff now. We've got all the database centers, which when they were in power, they spent time building the database centers. But now we're in control of those database centers. But if they can convince you that the Trump administration is evil and somehow doing a bad job, then maybe they can trick you into basically handing the reins of power back over to one of their controlled opposition factions.
Yeah, and so in understanding this too, and someone mentioned the United Nations, you have to understand what the Board of Peace is. The architecture that had produced what we see in the Iran war right now. You can't understand why they're bombing Iran or in this conflict with Iran without understanding these basic principles. Iran represents a primary chess piece, a disruptive knight on the chessboard of globalization. It has to be brought under control, or the globalist system will just continue to operate as it has. You can't solve all of the internal domestic problems until you stop the problem that's coming from outside and reaching in and meddling. And the Board of Peace, we'll get into each one of these issues independently so that you can understand all of it. So we'll talk more about, we'll get into the color revolution, the managed chaos, the panic cycles that happen inside the country, what you see with in the Lindsey Clancy case now with all the supporters. That has every characteristic of a color revolution. And we'll take you back and show you how Lord Palmerston, the 19th century British Foreign Secretary, invented the color revolution. And a group he had called Young Europe. They had a Young England and a Young Europe organizations, networks that destabilized nations across Europe at the time and worked to prevent the American system from spreading. Now his heirs, one name you can see today, who is Jacob Rees-Mogg in the UK, to Pierre Poilievre in Canada. They're openly quoting Lord Palmerston, the inventor of the color revolution. Why? Because Trump just ended 80 years of American support for regime change abroad. So they're bringing it home. They're trying to run a regime change right here inside of America. That's the goal. That's why we're divided. That's why these movements, people talk about George Soros a lot. He's the one funding this. Well, William Rees-Mogg, Jacob Rees-Mogg, father, is the one who created George Soros to begin with. This is very interesting. It's not dense, but it is broad. And we have to get to each one of these pieces independently so that you can digest this, so you can absorb it. And then you can decide for yourself whether or not it's true. And as for that, 2.5. I'm only 30 minutes over what I had in mind for Summer. Anything you'd like to say, on the way out?
I guess we really hope and pray that this has edified you guys and answered a lot of questions about, how to interpret what we see right now in our culture. And we do encourage you to have a look through the chat and please read those articles. I've tried to cross-reference stuff as much as possible in there. And we try to provide a lot of, source links and such so that you guys can investigate this on your own. And we just really pray that you guys would, take it upon yourselves to look into the things that we are bringing forward. And we'll just continue to keep trying to bring this message to life for you guys, because nothing matters more right now than to try to faithfully steward our inheritance that God has given to us. He has providentially created the United States of America, and there are very clever and cunning adversaries trying to tear our country apart, especially as November approaches. And we need to just stay focused and realize that who the enemy is. And once you see the enemy, and once you understand the playbook of the enemy, it's very easy. But until you understand who that enemy is, the globalist faction, because I'm telling you that there's so much of a huge operation psychologically to make you think that it's all evil and it's all corrupt and Donald Trump's in on it, or Trump's being controlled, or he's being played. They want you to think that this whole thing is still happening. Why? I think in large part, this is just a theory, but it's kind of like a, how they like to think that they can manifest their future, manifest their reality. I think that one of their ways of keeping this going is that they really want to just keep their eye on the ball that they want to have happen. So they refuse to acknowledge that they are actually being taken down right now. The globalists are being taken down right now. They are being bled dry. And there's a lot of evidence to show that. And so if you're willing to know where to look and to look at it honestly, then it's very encouraging. But it is a very sober-minded time for the nation, because you wonder, how many people will be swept away and ultimately vote against their own best interests this November. But either way, it's all in God's design and plan, and so we can always rest in that. But I do believe that we have a duty to learn as much as we can and be good stewards of what we've inherited, because this is our calling for the time in which we live.
Yes, it doesn't mean that America is God's covenant nation.
No.
It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that as Christians, we're called to be faithful stewards of the blessings we've received. And liberty is a blessing. The system that the Constitution that we inherited is a blessing, because it intended to protect the covenant between God and man. Satan was given authority on earth, and then mankind was created to take dominion on the earth, and the conflict started there. It was inevitable. But remember, neither Satan nor mankind, nor any combination of the two, have ever been able to establish a global one world system, and they won't. That won't happen. When you look around and it seems like the good guys are losing, just remember, Satan has never been able to build a kingdom. He is called the God of this world in Scripture, but that's because he is the God of those people who have chosen to follow him. All of this can be understood with one key, and it's not hidden. But they're very happy for you to think it's hidden. And a lot of people out there today are talking to you and trying to convince you and show you that it's not happening, that it's not even possible. All we're saying, yes, it is possible, and there is a move for it right now. You take that and do your due diligence with it. All right. Thank you, my friends, for being with us here tonight. Thank you for those who have been out there in the chat with us and for hanging out on this late night Art Bell edition of Armor of Truth Live, or what we're calling, I guess we're calling now Globalism is Dead, the American System is Back, episode 1, loosely. Thank you, guys. God bless you. We'll see you again here very soon.
Good night. Thank you.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. The average American, they say, soft and decadent. He'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide and do nothing to interfere as they strike at the community's power centers. Any all-out revolution must create a state of crisis wherein almost all of the male population would be forced to remain in their homes because of its affluence. It has waxed soft. The motive force behind its life drive is its endless pursuit of prestige, conspicuous consumption, and sensual pleasure. After the stage is properly set, America could be brought to her knees in 90 days. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization behind these preparations has almost unlimited financial resources. Our enemies are deadly serious about their task, and it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans and their progress. The strategy calls for the quiet conversion of our government. They have one and only one solution for all problems. More government, and then more and more until it's total government. In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist. Label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
Because I don't hate anybody. Now, I want to see every single solitary person on this earth. I want to see their souls saved. Every single solitary person. And each and every one of us that calls ourselves a Christian should pray vehemently for their souls, that we would see them in heaven and forget about all this when we get up there.